You stand on cobbled streets, the scent of wood smoke and spices heavy in the air. This is not your world, but a world thousands of years removed, alive with the echoes of lost empires. Look around you. People move with purpose, their lives filled with labor, joy, and sorrow. But beneath the surface of these bustling civilizations, human nature held a familiar shadow. They too sought escape, euphoria, or solace in habits that became unbreakable chains. We often think of addiction as a modern problem, a product of our complex age. Yet, delve deeper and you will discover a hidden history. From the ritualistic sips of potent brews to the sacred smoke rising from ancient fires, and the sweet promise of exotic sugars, our ancestors knew the subtle snare of craving. Join us as we uncover the forgotten addictions that shaped the very fabric of ancient life, revealing desires that are as old as humanity itself. As you step from the bustling marketplace into the quieter alleyways, the air itself seems to shift, carrying whispers of needs and cravings that transcend time. You might assume the quest for altered states, for solace in a substance, is a recent phenomenon. But look closer, listen more carefully to the echoes of the past, and you will recognize a pattern as old as civilization itself. Across continents and millennia, from grand palaces to humble huts, humanity has always reached for something to dull the pain, heighten the pleasure, or simply endure the day. These were not always seen as vices, but often woven into the very fabric of daily life, into religious rites, into medicinal practice. Yet, the subtle lure, the gradual tightening of the invisible chain, was just as real then as it is now. Consider the poppy. Imagine yourself in the sun-drenched fields of ancient Mesopotamia or along the fertile banks of the Nile, perhaps 2,000 or 3,000 years before your time. Here you would see rows of elegant flowers, their delicate petals hiding a secret. The Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations, called the opium poppy the whole gill, the joy plant. A fitting name for its milky sap, when dried, offered a potent elixir that could soothe all manner of suffering. You watch as a farmer carefully scores the green seed pods after the petals have fallen. Slowly, a white latex oozes out, drying into a sticky, dark gum under the intense sun. This is raw opium. For the ancient Egyptians, this substance was a gift from the gods, deeply integrated into their sophisticated medical practices. You might visit a temple physician or a village healer, and they would prescribe a dose of opium to alleviate pain, quiet a cough, or induce sleep. Imagine a mother gently administering a small amount to a crying infant, perhaps mixed into a honeyed drink, to calm its distress. For centuries this was accepted practice. It was a potent medicine revered for its efficacy. But even then, the fine line between remedy and reliance blurred. The euphoria it brought, the profound sense of peace, was a powerful draw. You can almost feel the heavy, warm embrace of its influence, silencing the anxieties of a hard life, offering a brief, blissful escape. Walk with me now across the Mediterranean, to the sun-baked hills of ancient Greece. Here too the poppy held sway. The god of sleep was Morpheus, and his very name comes from the Greek word for form or shape, as he was said to appear in dreams in human form. The poppy was his symbol. Physicians like Hippocrates, the father of medicine, used opium extensively. You might find yourself in a Greek home at a symposium, where intellectuals and philosophers gathered to drink wine and discuss the universe. While wine flowed freely, opium, perhaps in a concentrated form known as laudanum, might also be available. Not for everyone, not openly consumed in great quantities, but present, a tool for deeper thought, for artistic inspiration, or simply for luxurious relaxation. The Romans, ever practical, adopted it from the Greeks and perfected its widespread use. You can almost see the wealthy Roman matron, struggling with chronic pain or insomnia, turning to her physician for a small, dark pellet of opium. You might overhear hushed conversations in the market about its effectiveness, its ability to banish earthly troubles. As the Roman Empire expanded, so too did the trade routes, carrying this powerful plant across vast distances. Its availability increased and with it the potential for its less noble applications. The escape it offered from the harsh realities of slave labor, the pressures of imperial life, or the simple tedium of existence, became a siren song for many. The chains were unseen, but they were forged link by silent link, in the quiet pursuit of relief. But not all ancient obsessions brought such profound sedation. Some invigorated, sharpened the mind, or simply provided a daily ritual around which life revolved. Let us travel now, far from the poppy fields, to the ancient lands of Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers nourished the cradle of civilization. Here, a different kind of potent brew took hold, one that was not a medicine or a luxury but a staple: beer. Imagine the bustling streets of Ur or Babylon 4,000 years ago. The air here isn't just thick with wood smoke, but also with the sweet, yeasty aroma of brewing. You see workers laboring under the relentless sun, their muscles aching, their throats dry. For them, beer was more than just a drink. It was a fundamental part of their diet, a source of calories and nutrients, often safer to drink than the local water. You might be offered a thick, cloudy concoction, perhaps served in a large communal jar with straws, or in individual bowls. It was often coarse, unfiltered, with bits of grain still floating in it. But its effect was undeniable: a mild euphoria, a loosening of inhibitions, a brief respite from the arduous demands of the day. Look around a Mesopotamian construction site. You will see laborers receiving their daily rations, which included bread, onions, and often a generous portion of beer. It fueled their work, provided comfort, and fostered camaraderie. It was part of their religious ceremonies, poured out as offerings to the gods, connecting the earthly and the divine. You can hear the rhythmic chants of workers, the clinking of clay vessels, the murmur of satisfied sighs as they consumed their daily sustenance. The desire for this fermented grain wasn't just about escape. It was about survival, about social bonding, about marking the passage of time. Yet, the deep societal integration, the expectation of its presence at every meal and every gathering, made it a silent master, a requirement that shaped their economy and their culture. Move further west into ancient Greece and Rome, and the drink of choice largely transitioned from beer to wine. The grapes grown in the Mediterranean sun produced a beverage that became emblematic of culture, philosophy, and festivity. You are now at a Greek symposium, a gathering of elite men reclining on couches, engaged in lively debate and philosophical discourse. Here, wine is served, often diluted with water, sometimes flavored with honey or spices. It flows freely, encouraging eloquence and convivial spirit. You hear laughter, passionate arguments, the clinking of kylixes as libations are poured. But even in this refined setting, the invisible chains could tighten. The god Bacchus or Dionysus, revered for wine and revelry, also represented its intoxicating power and the loss of self-control. You might witness someone succumbing to excess, their carefully constructed decorum crumbling under the influence. In Rome, the love for wine was legendary, reaching extravagant levels. The sheer volume consumed, the elaborate drinking games, the social pressure to partake, all speak to a widespread dependency. The morning after, the headaches and nausea would be familiar companions, a tangible reminder of the night's indulgence. The pursuit of pleasure, of social acceptance, of a heightened state of mind, again led to a subtle but powerful form of servitude. Now, let us journey to a completely different corner of the ancient world, the towering, majestic Andes Mountains of South America, long before the arrival of European explorers. Here, amidst thin air and challenging terrain, an entirely different plant offered solace and strength: the coca leaf. You stand on a high mountain trail, the wind biting at your face, the sun intensely bright against the impossibly blue sky. The air is thin, making every breath a conscious effort. Yet, the local people move with an incredible endurance, carrying heavy loads, traversing steep slopes. Watch closely. You will see them pause not to drink but to pull a small pouch from their clothing. With practiced grace, they select a handful of bright green coca leaves, perhaps adding a small amount of lime or ash from a burnt plant to activate the alkaloids. Then they tuck this wad into their cheek, chewing slowly, rhythmically. This is not a narcotic in the way opium is. The immediate effect is a gentle stimulation, a mild euphoria, a sense of clarity. It suppresses hunger, quells thirst, and most importantly in this environment, combats altitude sickness and provides sustained energy. For the Inca and their predecessors, the coca leaf was sacred, a gift from the Pachamama, Mother Earth. It was used in religious ceremonies, offered to the gods, and chewed by messengers, warriors, and laborers alike. You can feel the quiet strength it imparts, the subtle mental boost, the numbing of fatigue. The need for coca was ingrained in daily life, an essential tool for survival and thriving in such a harsh landscape. It was a social glue shared in gatherings, a sign of hospitality. To not have coca would be to face the day's immense challenges without a vital ally. For these ancient peoples, the line between medicine, ritual, and dependence was perhaps even finer. The cravings were not for a profound escape, but for the sustained ability to function, to work, to survive. Yet, the constant chewing, the physiological and psychological reliance on its effects, speaks to a deeply rooted obsession. The invisible chain here was not one of oblivion, but of relentless, necessary energy. As you reflect on these journeys across time and space, you begin to see a pattern emerge. Whether it was the blissful oblivion of opium, the communal comfort of ancient beer, the sophisticated revelry of wine, or the enduring energy of the coca leaf, humanity's desires for altered states, for relief or for enhancement, are not new. These ancient civilizations, as complex and varied as they were, shared a common thread: the quest for something beyond the ordinary, a pursuit that, however innocently it began, often led to unseen chains. These obsessions were not just personal struggles. They were often interwoven into the very fabric of society, shaping economies, rituals, and daily routines. They remind us that the human heart, with its yearning for comfort, for escape, for strength, has always sought and often found powerful companions, some of which demanded a price. As you reflect on these journeys across time and space, you begin to see a pattern emerge. Whether it was the blissful oblivion of opium, the communal comfort of ancient beer, the sophisticated revelry of wine, or the enduring energy of the coca leaf, humanity's desires for altered states, for relief or for enhancement, are not new. These ancient civilizations, as complex and varied as they were, shared a common thread: the quest for something beyond the ordinary, a pursuit that, however innocently it began, often led to unseen chains. These obsessions were not just personal struggles. They were often interwoven into the very fabric of society, shaping economies, rituals, and daily routines. They remind us that the human heart, with its yearning for comfort, for escape, for strength, has always sought and often found powerful companions, some of which demanded a price. And perhaps no companion, no ancient elixir, has etched itself so deeply into the human story, has woven itself so inextricably into the very fabric of civilization, as the fermented brew. You stand now at the dawn of an entirely different kind of enchantment. One born of grain and grape, a nectar of the gods that promised both revelry and ruin. Imagine a world before clean drinking water was a given. A world where the water from the river or well could carry disease, a silent killer in every sip. It is in this challenging environment that one of humanity's most enduring and intoxicating inventions took hold. The accidental discovery of fermentation, perhaps from a forgotten bowl of fruit left to the warmth of the sun, or wet grain left too long in a storage jar, must have seemed like magic. The transformation. The raw sweetness turned into something else, something with a kick, a warmth, a sense of well-being. This was not merely a drink. It was often safer than water, more nourishing, and possessed a captivating power over the senses. Travel back in time over 9,000 years ago, to the Fertile Crescent, to the very cradle of civilization. Here, among the earliest agricultural communities, you would find the origins of beer. It was not the crisp, clear lager you know today. Instead, picture a thick, gruel-like concoction, cloudy and rich with nutrients. Emmer wheat and barley were ground, mixed with water, and allowed to ferment naturally. This was more than just a beverage. It was a staple food, a source of calories, vitamins, and minerals. You would see laborers drinking it from communal bowls, children given watered-down versions, and priests pouring it as offerings to the gods. In ancient Mesopotamia, beer was an integral part of daily life. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest written legal codes, even specified daily rations of beer for different social classes. You as a laborer might receive 2 liters a day. A high priestess perhaps 5. It fueled the construction of ziggurats, lubricated social gatherings, and was central to religious ceremonies. Drunkenness was not uncommon, nor was it always condemned. In fact, some texts celebrate the joyous abandon of a good drinking session. Yet even then there were cautionary tales. In Sumerian poetry, you hear laments about the morning after, the splitting headache, the regrettable words. There were also laws against diluting beer or overcharging for it, indicating its economic importance and the desire to regulate its quality. The price for a particularly rowdy patron or an overindulgent reveler might be harsh, but the substance itself remained revered. Cross the desert to ancient Egypt, and the scene is remarkably similar. Beer, or heket, was the drink of choice for all. You would witness its brewing in every household, its presence in every meal. It was so central to their existence that the hieroglyph for meal often depicted bread and beer. Egyptian workers building the pyramids were paid in part with beer, providing both hydration and sustenance for their arduous labor. It was believed to have medicinal properties, used in poultices and potions. The goddess Hathor was even associated with beer, symbolizing joy and intoxication. But even as beer flowed freely, a darker current ran beneath the surface. Excessive consumption led to social disorder, violence, and neglected duties. Egyptian texts contain vivid descriptions of the consequences of overindulgence, warnings against becoming like a drunkard who cannot find their way home. You can imagine the frustration of a husband whose wife spent too much time at the beer house, or a master whose servant was too inebriated to work. While they lacked our modern understanding of addiction, the societal disruption caused by excessive drinking was undeniable, prompting early attempts at moral guidance and social control. The chains of fermented grain, while invisible, could be felt in the homes and streets of these ancient lands. Now shift your gaze westward, across the Mediterranean, to the sun-drenched hills of ancient Greece. Here, a different kind of fermented nectar reigns: wine. While beer was the drink of the common folk, wine, diluted with water, was the sophisticated beverage of philosophers, poets, and politicians. You are invited to a symposium, a formal drinking party. As you recline on a couch, surrounded by learned men, you are handed a kylix, a shallow drinking cup. The wine is poured from a crater, a large mixing bowl, where it has been carefully diluted, often with 3 or 4 parts water to 1 part wine. To drink undiluted wine was considered barbaric, a sign of a lack of self-control. Wine was sacred, the gift of Dionysus, god of revelry, madness, and ecstasy. It played a central role in religious festivals, where inhibitions were shed and boundaries blurred. You might participate in a Dionysian procession, feeling the intoxicating rhythm, the communal release. It was believed to unlock creativity, to inspire prophetic visions, and to bring a sense of divine connection. Yet even in this culture of moderation and philosophical discourse, the potential for excess was ever present. The myths themselves told tales of Dionysus's followers descending into frenzied, destructive behavior when overcome by the wine's power. You would hear stories of men losing their fortunes, their reputations, and their sanity through unrestrained drinking. Greek tragedies explored the pitfalls of hubris and lack of temperance. While the ideal was controlled enjoyment, the reality was often quite different, and the consequences severe. The Greeks understood that wine, while divine, held the power to corrupt. Follow the Romans, who adopted and expanded upon Greek wine culture. For them, Bacchus was the god of wine, and their bacchanalia were legendary for their uninhibited celebrations. Wine became a symbol of status, power, and Roman civilization itself. You would see vineyards stretching across the empire, wine cellars stocked with amphorae, and wine being consumed at nearly every meal, even by women and children, albeit often watered down. Roman soldiers were given wine rations, believed to give them courage and strength. It was used as an antiseptic, a medicine, and a social lubricant. But the Roman obsession with wine also came at a cost. Historical accounts speak of widespread drunkenness, leading to violence, sexual promiscuity, and neglect of civic duties. The Roman moralists frequently decried the decline in virtue brought about by excessive drinking. Sumptuary laws were enacted, attempting to control the lavishness of feasts and the quantities of wine consumed. You would encounter edicts against certain types of public intoxication, and the punishment for those who succumbed too often could be public disgrace or worse. The unseen chains here were not always subtle. They were often loud, public, and destructive, leading to a loss of control that societies even then struggled to manage. From the thick beer of ancient Sumer to the diluted wine of a Roman feast, alcohol was a foundational element of civilization. It fueled religious ecstasy, social cohesion, and even economic stability. But in its profound ability to alter consciousness, to loosen inhibitions, and to provide comfort, it also held a potent grip. The ancients might not have used the term addiction as we understand it today, a medical condition requiring treatment. Instead, they often viewed persistent drunkenness as a moral failing, a lack of self-control, or a character flaw. Yet, the patterns of behavior they described, the cravings, the inability to stop, the devastating consequences for the individual and society, are strikingly familiar. You see that the human impulse to seek altered states, to find solace or strength in a bottle or a cup, is as old as civilization itself. The stories of alcohol in the ancient world are not merely tales of invention and celebration. They are also profound lessons in the enduring power of substances to entwine themselves with human life, to offer both gifts and demands, and to forge unseen chains that, despite their invisibility, held their grip with powerful, undeniable force. These ancient beverages, so central to their cultures, remind us that the allure of escape or enhancement has always come with a price, a quiet whisper of servitude beneath the roar of revelry. You stand now on a different threshold, leaving behind the fermented grains and grapes, the boisterous feasts and mournful laments of ancient alcohol. The chains we spoke of, those invisible bonds of servitude, were not forged solely by the brewer's art or the vintner's skill. There was another, subtler master, one whose touch was softer, whose whispers were more seductive. This master did not roar in revelry, it lulled you into a profound, often beautiful, silence. Imagine yourself in the blistering sun of ancient Egypt, or perhaps under the watchful eyes of Sumerian ziggurats, thousands of years before our own time. You walk through fields not of wheat or barley, but of something far more delicate, far more dangerous. Here, in the Fertile Crescent and along the life-giving Nile, you see a flower deceptively simple yet laden with a profound secret. Its petals, often a vibrant crimson, a delicate white, or a stunning purple, dance in the gentle breeze. This is the poppy, Papaver somniferum, the sleep-bringing poppy. It is a plant of ancient lineage, its story interwoven with the earliest threads of human civilization. For nearly 6 millennia, this unassuming flower has offered solace and oblivion, healing and destruction in equal measure. Its milky latex, harvested from the incised seed pod, holds a potent cocktail of alkaloids, a pharmacological symphony that could quiet pain, banish fear, and usher in a dreamless, profound sleep. Step closer and you can almost feel the dry desert air on your skin. You are in a bustling market in Thebes, or perhaps a temple garden in Luxor, 3,000 years ago. The air is thick with the scent of spices, dust, and human endeavor. But beneath it all, an almost imperceptible sweetness, the promise of the poppy. To the ancient Egyptians, the poppy was not a vice, it was a gift. It was the plant of joy, the drug of dreams. You might encounter it in the hands of a skilled physician, a respected healer invoking the wisdom of Thoth or Sekhmet. Its extracts were a cornerstone of their pharmacopoeia. Consider the agonizing pain of a compound fracture, or the burning torment of a deep wound. Imagine the relentless cough that racks a child, or the incessant weeping of an infant. For these and countless other maladies, the poppy offered respite. You might be given a potion, a simple decoction of poppy heads, to ease the throes of a fever. Perhaps you would witness a mother administer a few drops of a milky liquid to her screaming baby, quieting its cries and lulling it into a peaceful slumber. The Ebers Papyrus, a medical text dating back to about 1500 BC, details recipes for easing pain and inducing sleep, many of them featuring the poppy. You would find prescriptions for easing headaches, for treating insomnia, and even for quieting restless children, all relying on this powerful botanical. The line between medicine and something more insidious was, for them, indistinct. If a little brought relief, might a little more bring even deeper peace? If it eased physical pain, might it not also soothe the pain of the soul, the anxieties of daily life, the grief for a lost loved one? You can imagine the subtle creep of dependence. A child given poppy milk for a cough might come to crave that soothing oblivion long after the cough subsided. An adult relying on it for chronic pain might find themselves unable to function without its daily embrace. Think of the pharaohs, the priests, the scribes, the ordinary people. You see images of the poppy adorning tombs, carved into reliefs, a symbol of sleep, death, and rebirth. It was associated with fertility goddesses, with the journey to the underworld, a bridge between worlds. Its presence was not hidden, it was celebrated, revered for its potent properties. Yet, beneath this reverence, lay the shadow of its power. Oh, you might not have heard the word addiction as we understand it, not in the papyri or the hieroglyphs. But you would have seen the effects. The listlessness, the constant craving, the physical discomfort when the soothing draught was withheld. You would have observed those who seemed to exist in a permanent state of hazy detachment, their lives gradually unraveling under the poppy's spell. The ancient Egyptians, astute observers of the human condition, surely noticed these patterns. They understood dependence even if they lacked our modern vocabulary for it. They recognized when a person was caught by a substance, even if they attributed it to a spiritual failing or an imbalance of humors, rather than neurochemical changes. Travel back further still, across the desert sands, to the cradles of civilization in Mesopotamia. To Sumer, a land of vast plains and mighty rivers, where writing was born and cities first rose from the dust. Here, 5,000 years ago, the poppy was not just known, it was cultivated. The Sumerians called it Hulgil, the joy plant. You can almost hear the soft rustle of its leaves in a Sumerian garden, the gentle sigh of the wind through its slender stems. For these earliest urban dwellers, the poppy was a potent tool. You might see a Sumerian priest offering a decoction to a supplicant seeking prophetic dreams or spiritual insight. You might observe a weary farmer, his body aching from a day's toil in the fields, finding solace in a poppy-infused drink. The sheer antiquity of its use is astounding. Clay tablets, inscribed with cuneiform, describe its cultivation and its medicinal applications. The knowledge of the poppy's properties was passed down generation after generation, across empires and epochs. In Sumerian culture, the poppy was integrated into their very cosmology. It might have been seen as a divine gift, a conduit to the gods, a way to transcend the earthly realm. Imagine yourself participating in a ritual, the smoky air thick with incense, the rhythmic chanting punctuated by the subtle, almost imperceptible shift in consciousness brought on by the sacred plant. The joy plant brought not just physical ease, but a profound alteration of perception, a journey into inner space. But even then, the joy was intertwined with a deeper cost. You can envision the slow, almost imperceptible transformation. What began as a blessed relief could become an inescapable need. The farmer who took it for pain might find himself unable to rise for work without it. The priest who sought spiritual insights might find his visions clouded, his life consumed by the pursuit of the plant's embrace. The poppy in both Egypt and Sumer represents a fundamental human story, the pursuit of comfort and escape, and the unforeseen consequences that can arise from even the most benevolent intentions. You see how a powerful medicine, a sacred plant, a source of joy, could slowly, subtly become a master. Its invisible chains were woven not from metal, but from the very fabric of human desire and the relentless chemistry of the body. The silence it offered was profound, a blessed release from the clamor of existence. But it was a silence that could become a prison. A beautiful prison, perhaps, adorned with the crimson petals of a flower, but a prison nonetheless. The ancient world, in its sophisticated understanding of medicine and ritual, understood the poppy's power, but perhaps not the full extent of its grip. They witnessed the effects, the profound transformations, the slow surrender to its sweet oblivion, and perhaps they too, like us, sometimes mistook surrender for salvation. You stand there now, feeling the weight of those thousands of years, understanding that the human journey with substances has always been one of duality, gift and burden, freedom and servitude, joy and sorrow. The poppy, sleeping quietly in its ancient fields, held one of the most powerful and enduring secrets of that paradoxical human experience. You leave the quiet, sun-drenched poppy fields behind, the lingering scent of its sweet, narcotic essence still a whisper in the air. Now you journey eastward across vast, windswept steppes, where the air bites with a different kind of chill. The landscape transforms, growing starker, more immense, stretching endlessly beneath a sky that feels impossibly wide. Here, a different people thrived, a different plant held sway, and a different form of engagement with altered states unfolded, one steeped in fire, smoke and profound spiritual purpose. You are walking now with the Scythians, a fierce and fascinating confederation of nomadic tribes who dominated the Eurasian steppes for centuries, from roughly the 9th to the 2nd centuries before Common Era. Imagine them. Master horsemen, renowned archers, their lives intertwined with the rhythm of their herds and the constant movement across these vast plains. Their world was one of survival, conquest, and a deep reverence for the unseen forces that governed their existence. And within that world, you will discover, a certain plant played a role as central and as intoxicating as the poppy did for other civilizations. It is cannabis, a plant we know well today, but whose ancient narrative often goes untold or is misunderstood. For the Scythians, cannabis was not merely a fiber for cloth, though they certainly used it for that purpose. It was a conduit, a gateway, a sacred smoke that bound them to their ancestors, their gods, and to each other. You stand at the edge of one of their camps, the rawhide tents or yurts dotting the landscape. The air is cold, but a warmth emanates from a central gathering. You approach, drawn by the flickering light and the murmuring voices. Here, a ritual is taking place, one that the Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century before Common Era, famously documented with a mixture of awe and perhaps a touch of bewildered fascination. He described a practice that must have seemed utterly alien to his Mediterranean sensibilities. Scythian warriors, after a funeral or a battle, purifying themselves, not with water but with fire and smoke. You see it now, a small tent-like structure, perhaps made of felt or hides, erected over a shallow pit. Within that pit, stones are heated until they glow red-hot, radiating an intense heat that warms the cold steppe air. Then a crucial ingredient is introduced. You watch as a Scythian elder, his face weathered by sun and wind, carefully places bundles of cannabis seeds and flowers onto the scorching stones. Immediately, a thick, pungent smoke billows forth, dense and heavy, carrying with it a distinct, earthy aroma. It is the unmistakable scent of burning cannabis, amplified by the enclosed space. The Scythians gathered inside the small tent, their faces intent, their bodies already beginning to relax in the intense heat. As the smoke fills the enclosure, they inhale deeply, deliberately, inviting its effects into their very being. Herodotus wrote that they howl with delight as the cannabis vapor takes hold. You can almost hear those ancient cries now, a chorus of exhilaration and release echoing across the millennia. What did they experience in that smoky chamber? You can imagine the sensory overload, the oppressive heat, the swirling acrid smoke stinging the eyes and lungs, followed by the slow, creeping onset of cannabis intoxication. The world would soften, its harsh edges blurring. Pain, physical discomfort, the anxieties of a nomadic warrior's life, all would recede into a haze. A profound sense of relaxation would wash over them, followed perhaps by euphoria, heightened sensory perception, or deep introspection. For a people constantly on the move, facing the brutal realities of the steppe, warfare, and the elements, this ritual offered a profound respite. It was a way to commune, to cleanse, to find solace. It was perhaps a way to mourn their dead, to celebrate victories, or to prepare for future challenges, their minds open to visions and insights. The communal aspect of the ritual would have fostered a powerful sense of unity and shared experience, strengthening tribal bonds. Archaeological discoveries confirm Herodotus's accounts. Excavations of Scythian burial mounds, known as kurgans, particularly those found in the frozen permafrost of the Pazyryk Valley in the Altai Mountains, have yielded astonishing insights. You can visualize the finds, remarkably preserved wooden frames of these small sweat lodges, leather pouches filled with cannabis seeds and flower fragments, and bronze censers or burners, still containing traces of carbonized cannabis. You can almost feel the chill of the Pazyryk tomb, the eerie preservation of items buried millennia ago. Here, an elite Scythian warrior was interred, surrounded by his possessions, including these implements for sacred smoking. This was not a casual indulgence, but a practice integral to their spiritual and social fabric, deemed essential even for the journey into the afterlife. Consider the role this plant played. For the Scythians, cannabis was not an illegal substance hidden from society. It was woven into the fabric of their daily and ritual lives. It facilitated communal experiences, offered spiritual communion, and likely provided relief from the rigors of their existence. Was it an addiction in the modern sense? The question invites a deeper look into the nature of human dependence. When a substance is deeply integrated into a culture, when its use is sanctioned, even celebrated as part of religious rites, healing practices, or social bonding, the line between ritual and reliance can become permeable. For the Scythians, the regular, perhaps even daily use of cannabis by at least some members of their society would have established a pattern of engagement. The powerful psychological effects, the euphoria, the altered perception, the relief from stress and pain, would have been highly reinforcing. You consider the environment they inhabited. Life on the steppes was hard. There was constant exposure to extreme weather, the ever-present threat of conflict, and the monotonous demands of herding. In this context, a plant that could reliably transport one to a different mental space, that could ease physical discomfort and mental burden, would be profoundly attractive. It would be sought out, cultivated, and perhaps even craved. The howling with delight, Herodotus described, suggests a powerful, almost ecstatic experience. This was not a subtle effect but a profound alteration of consciousness. To what extent did the Scythians rely on this alteration? Did it become a crutch for dealing with the harsh realities of their world? We cannot definitively say if individual Scythians experienced what we would term addiction, with its hallmark compulsive seeking and negative consequences. But we can certainly infer a widespread, deeply ingrained cultural dependency on the effects of cannabis. It was a tool for spiritual connection, yes, but also a powerful psychological comfort. The regular, deliberate pursuit of these altered states, facilitated by fire and smoke, speaks to a deeply human desire to transcend ordinary reality, to find escape, insight, or simply relief. Just as the poppy offered solace to those in pain or seeking oblivion, so too did cannabis offer a different, but equally potent pathway to altered consciousness for the Scythians. You feel the dry, cold air of the steppe on your face, the lingering ghost of cannabis smoke in your imagination. The Scythians, with their fiery rituals, remind us that the human quest for altered states is as ancient as humanity itself, a fundamental drive that has manifested in myriad forms across cultures and continents. They understood the plant's power, harnessed it for their spiritual and social needs, and in doing so integrated it so deeply into their lives that it became an undeniable part of their identity. The sacred smoke of the Scythians was not just a fleeting pleasure. It was a cornerstone of their ritual life, a balm for their souls, and a testament to the enduring human fascination with substances that can unlock different dimensions of experience. It was a forgotten addiction perhaps, not in the sense of individual pathology, but as a widespread, culturally sanctioned reliance on a mind-altering substance that profoundly shaped their lives and worldview. And as you walk away from the ancient steppes, you carry with you the understanding that the story of humanity's relationship with substances is far richer and far more complex than you might have ever imagined. The journey continues across time and cultures, revealing more forgotten paths to altered minds. As you leave behind the windswept steppes and the swirling smoke of ancient Scythia, the air around you grows heavy, thick with humidity and the scent of unfamiliar spices. You journey eastward, across vast stretches of land and sea, tracing routes of ancient trade and migration, until you arrive in a world vibrant with tropical greens and the rhythmic chatter of daily life. This is Southeast Asia, a land where for thousands of years, another profoundly ingrained substance has held sway, not burned in a brazier, but lovingly prepared and slowly savored. It is a substance that colors the mouths of millions a startling, vibrant red, a silent testament to its enduring power, the betel quid. Imagine yourself stepping into a bustling marketplace in a place like ancient Thailand or the Philippines, perhaps 1,000 years ago or even further back, 3 millennia into the past. The sounds of vendors hawking their wares blend with the murmur of conversations. You see people going about their daily lives, their faces etched with the stories of their world. But one detail catches your eye, a recurring splash of color, a crimson stain that adorns many smiles. This red is the mark of betel. It is not just a casual habit here. It is woven into the very fabric of society, an act of ritual, hospitality, status, and mild intoxication that has shaped cultures for longer than many civilizations have existed. Its use can be traced back to at least 5,000 years ago, with archaeological evidence from places like Indonesia showing its deep roots. To understand this forgotten addiction, you must first understand the components. At its heart is the betel nut, which is not a true nut but the seed of the areca palm. This seed, typically sliced or crushed, is then wrapped in a fresh, green betel leaf. But the magic and the vibrant color comes with the addition of slaked lime, a calcium hydroxide made from crushed seashells or coral. Often, other ingredients are added for flavor and effect. Spices like cardamom, cloves or cinnamon, tobacco for a stronger kick, or various plant extracts. This small, neat package is known as a betel quid. You watch as an elder carefully prepares her quid. Her movements are practiced, almost ceremonial. She takes a fresh betel leaf, smooth and glossy, and spreads a tiny smear of the white lime paste across its surface. Then she places a small piece of the dried areca nut, perhaps along with a pinch of aromatic spice, squarely in the middle. With skilled fingers she folds the leaf into a compact parcel, tucking in the edges until it forms a neat square or triangle. This is the offering, the social lubricant, the personal indulgence. Now imagine taking one yourself. You place the quid into your mouth, tucking it between your cheek and gum, or perhaps chewing it gently to release its contents. The initial taste might be slightly acrid, a bit bitter from the leaf and the nut. But almost immediately, a warmth begins to spread. Your salivary glands activate, producing copious amounts of a brick-red saliva. This is the hallmark of beetle chewing, the visible sign of its consumption. And this is why you see the ground around you and sometimes the walls, stained with streaks of crimson. As you continue to chew, the active compounds in the areca nut, primarily alkaloids like arecaline, begin their work. You might feel a gentle rush, a subtle euphoria that lifts your spirits and sharpens your focus. It is not the powerful jolt of coffee or the profound alteration of strong intoxicants. Instead, it is a milder, more sustained stimulation, like a warm glow spreading through your body. You feel more alert, your mind a little clearer, and a sense of well-being settles over you. For many, it also brings a welcome feeling of satiety, curbing hunger and fatigue during long hours of work or travel. But the experience is more than just the physical sensation. Beetle chewing is deeply embedded in the social fabric. You see friends sharing quids as a gesture of camaraderie. Lovers might exchange specially prepared quids, infused with symbolic herbs as a sign of affection. At gatherings and ceremonies, offering beetle is a fundamental act of hospitality, a way to welcome guests and signify respect. To refuse it could be seen as an insult. It fosters conversation, eases tensions, and creates a shared, communal experience. Consider the role of status. Elaborate beetle boxes, often crafted from precious metals, intricately carved wood, or decorated with mother-of-pearl, were prized possessions. The quality of the beetle leaves, the freshness of the nut, and the inclusion of rare spices could all signify wealth and standing. The act of preparing and presenting a quid became an art form, a subtle display of one's refined taste and social position. A person with teeth stained dark red or even black from years of chewing was not seen as someone with poor hygiene, but often as a person of experience and wisdom, someone who had lived a full life. The red mouth was a badge of honor, a public declaration of participation in a valued cultural practice. In many ancient cultures, beetle also held significant spiritual and religious importance. It was offered to deities during rituals, particularly those associated with fertility, prosperity, and protection. It was used in divination, its patterns in a bowl of water read for omens. Shamans and healers might incorporate it into their practices, believing it enhanced their connection to the spirit world or aided in healing. It was present at births, marriages, and deaths, marking the significant transitions of life. The long-term effects, of course, were also present, though perhaps not fully understood by those who chewed it daily. The consistent chewing and the abrasive nature of the quid, combined with the chemical reactions, lead to the characteristic staining of teeth, turning them from white to reddish-brown, and eventually to an almost black hue. Gums recede, and over time, oral health issues become prevalent, including a significantly increased risk of oral cancer. But for thousands of years, these consequences were weighed against the immediate benefits. The social connection, the mild euphoria, the perceived medicinal properties like aiding digestion or freshening breath. This was an addiction that transcended individual pathology. It was a functional, everyday dependency, a cornerstone of social interaction and personal well-being for millions across vast regions. For the people of ancient Southeast Asia, Oceania, and parts of South Asia, beetle was not just a substance. It was a way of life. It shaped their smiles, their social rituals, their art, and even their spiritual beliefs. It provided a steady, gentle current of altered consciousness that helped them navigate their days, connect with their communities, and find a subtle pleasure in the mundane. As you step back from this vibrant, red-stained world, you recognize another powerful example of humanity's ancient and enduring relationship with substances that can subtly shift our perception and experience. The beetle quid, with its scarlet mark, stands as a testament to an addiction so deeply integrated into society that it became indistinguishable from culture itself, a forgotten path to altered minds, woven into the very fabric of identity. The journey into forgotten addictions continues, revealing just how diverse and profound these relationships have always been. Now, let your mind travel westward, across vast oceans and soaring mountain ranges, to another corner of the ancient world. You are drawn to a place where the air bites with a crisp chill, where colossal peaks scrape against an endless sky, and where the very act of breathing can be a struggle. You stand on the high plateau of the Andes, a land of thin air and relentless sun, where survival itself demands an intimate communion with the earth. Here, amidst the rugged beauty of these towering lands, you encounter a different kind of green leaf, one that has sustained civilizations for thousands of years. This is the coca plant, Erythroxylum coca, a humble shrub whose oval, vibrant leaves hold a profound secret, a gentle power that has shaped the lives, rituals, and very survival of the Andean people. Imagine yourself a farmer, toiling in terraced fields high above the valleys. The sun is intense, the oxygen scarce, and your muscles ache with the effort of cultivating potatoes or quinoa in the unyielding soil. Or perhaps you are a messenger, a chasca, running hundreds of miles across treacherous mountain paths, carrying vital messages for the Inca Empire. How do you endure? How do you conquer the fatigue, the hunger, the gnawing cold that permeates your very bones? You reach for your chuspa, a small woven pouch, and pull out a handful of dried coca leaves. The aroma is earthy, slightly bitter. You carefully select a few, placing them in your cheek, forming a bolus, a quid. But this is not enough. To unlock the leaf's true potential, you need an alkaline catalyst. Perhaps it is licta, a small block of plant ash in quinoa, or tacto, powdered seashells, or simply calcified lime. You introduce a tiny piece of this alkaline substance to the leaves in your mouth, and a slow, subtle alchemy begins. A gentle warmth spreads, followed by a slight numbing sensation in your mouth and throat. This is not an intoxicating rush, not a dizzying high. Instead, you feel a quiet surge of energy, a steadying presence. The gnawing hunger recedes, replaced by a sense of calm satiation. The ache in your muscles diminishes, and the thin air no longer feels quite so suffocating. You find a renewed focus, a sustained stamina that allows you to continue your work, to traverse the challenging landscape, to simply exist and thrive in this demanding environment. For the Andean people, coca was far more than a simple stimulant or a remedy for physical discomfort. It was a sacred plant, a gift from the divine, revered as a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. When you sit with your community, sharing a handful of leaves becomes an act of profound hospitality and bonding. It is offered to travelers, chewed during councils, and passed between friends as a symbol of trust and solidarity. The act of kokio, of chewing coca, is a social lubricant, a quiet ritual that weaves people together. You witness its role in spiritual ceremonies. Before planting crops, before embarking on a long journey, before making a significant decision, coca leaves are offered to Pachamama, Mother Earth, and to the Apis, the mountain spirits, as a sign of respect and gratitude. Shamans interpret patterns and thrown coca leaves for divination, seeking guidance and understanding. Healers use it in medicinal preparations, believing in its power to restore balance and well-being. It is a conduit to the ancestors, a silent prayer carried on the wind. This deep, multifaceted integration means that to speak of coca as a mere addiction, in the modern sense, feels almost inadequate, even misleading. Yet, it was undeniably a substance that created a profound physical and psychological dependency. Imagine your life without it. The fatigue would return, the hunger would gnaw, the cold would bite deeper. The spiritual connection to the land and your ancestors would feel diminished. Your ability to work, to socialize, to simply navigate your daily existence in this challenging world would be severely hampered. This was not an addiction driven by hedonism or escape, but by necessity and cultural continuity. It was a dependence born of survival, a fundamental pillar of Andean life. To be without your coca leaves was not simply an inconvenience. It was to be deprived of a vital tool for living, a key to endurance, a link to the sacred, and a thread in the social fabric. It was a condition of existence so deeply interwoven with daily life that it became part of what it meant to be Andean. Centuries later, when Europeans arrived and encountered the coca leaf, they struggled to comprehend its profound cultural significance. They saw only its physiological effects and much later, the raw material for a far more potent and destructive derivative, cocaine. The sacred leaf, a pillar of Andean civilization, was demonized, its context stripped away, its ancient purpose misunderstood, and its users condemned. But for millennia before, it was simply the leaf of the ancestors, a source of quiet strength and deep connection. So you stand here high in the Andes, the wind whispering tales through ancient stone ruins. You see the faint bulge in the cheeks of the people, a testament to a continuous tradition. You feel the subtle pulse of a culture sustained, not by a sudden rush, but by a steady, gentle hum of energy and connection provided by a simple green leaf. The forgotten addiction of coca was not a chain that bound people to a destructive habit, but a lifeline that connected them to their environment, their community, and their gods, allowing them to thrive against all odds. It highlights once again how our understanding of addiction is often a product of our own time and cultural lens. What one society perceives as a vice, another integrates as a virtue, a necessity, a sacred gift. The story of coca, like that of betel, unravels the complex tapestry of humanity's ancient relationship with substances, revealing dependencies that were not destructive forces, but foundational elements of entire civilizations. The dusty roads of ancient Greece hum with a different kind of reverence. You have traveled far, your heart a mix of anticipation and trepidation, leaving behind the bustling marketplaces of Athens. The journey itself is a ritual, a purification as you walk the sacred way 22 kilometers to the small town of Eleusis. You are one of thousands, pilgrims drawn by whispers of profound revelation, an annual promise of enlightenment that will forever alter your understanding of life and death. This is not a casual pilgrimage. The Eleusinian mysteries were the most revered religious rites of the ancient world, a secret society open to anyone who spoke Greek and had not committed murder. For nearly 2,000 years, from about 1500 before Common Era until the 4th century of our Common Era, these mysteries offered initiates a unique perspective on the afterlife, a profound sense of peace and purpose that no other experience could replicate. It was a secret so well kept, so deeply respected, that despite its immense popularity and longevity, we today have no complete written account of what truly transpired within the telesterion, the great hall of initiation. All we have are tantalizing clues and the testimonies of initiates who emerged transformed, filled with a newfound joy and freedom from the fear of death. Imagine yourself now arriving at Eleusis. The air is thick with anticipation. You have undergone preliminary purifications, perhaps even fasted. The night is drawing in, torches flicker, casting dancing shadows on the ancient stones. You hear the murmur of voices, a shared sense of awe and expectation. Then you are led into the telesterion, a vast, dimly lit hall, its tiered seating packed with fellow initiates. The atmosphere is charged, almost electric. You are at the precipice of something truly momentous. At the heart of these mysteries, we believe, was a sacred draught. Not a lavish feast, not an elaborate show, but a simple beverage known as kykeon. The historical texts mention kykeon as a gruel made of barley, water, and mint. A humble concoction, one might think, hardly capable of inspiring the profound, life-altering experiences attributed to the mysteries. Yet, it is this unassuming drink that lies at the core of one of humanity's most enduring and effective spiritual technologies. For decades, scholars have grappled with the question, how did kykeon deliver such powerful revelations? The answer, many now believe, lies in a hidden ingredient, a forgotten secret, a natural compound that unlocks the doors of perception. This ingredient is thought to be ergot, a fungus that grows on barley and other grains. You might recognize ergot from its modern, more infamous association with St. Anthony's fire, a painful disease caused by chronic ergot poisoning. But in small, controlled doses, ergot is a powerful psychedelic. Its active compounds are chemically similar to lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD, one of the most potent hallucinogens known to humankind. Consider this possibility. You are in the telesterion, the air heavy with incense, the darkness occasionally pierced by torchlight. You have undergone days of preparation, your mind open, your spirit yearning for revelation. Then you are presented with the Kikian. You raise the cup, its contents a simple mixture, perhaps slightly bitter from the ergot. You sip. The taste is earthy, slightly metallic. Initially nothing. But as the hours pass, as the rituals unfold around you, a subtle shift begins. You feel a loosening, a gentle blurring of the edges of your reality. The flickering torches seem to pulse with an inner light. The chanting, once distant, now resonates deep within your bones. Your senses heighten. Colors deepen, sounds acquire new meaning. Then the visions begin. Not necessarily chaotic hallucinations, but perhaps profound insights, symbolic journeys, encounters with divine archetypes. You might perceive the goddess Demeter, grieving for her daughter Persephone, her sorrow a universal lament that suddenly makes perfect sense in the context of your own life and losses. You might witness Persephone's descent into the underworld, and her triumphant return, a powerful metaphor for death and rebirth, for the cyclical nature of existence. You might experience a dissolution of your individual self, a profound connection to all things, a sense of unity with the cosmos. The fear of death, that primal human dread, begins to recede, replaced by an understanding that life and death are merely two sides of the same eternal coin. You are not just observing these sacred narratives, you are living them, feeling them, embodying them. The Kikian has not just opened your eyes, it has opened your soul. When you emerge from the telesterion at dawn, you are a changed person. The world outside seems sharper, more vibrant. The sunlight on the ancient stones is not just light, it is pure energy, pure grace. You carry within you a secret, an experience so personal and so profound that it defies articulation. You have seen the truth, you have touched the divine, and you are no longer afraid. The world has revealed its mysteries, and you are now an initiate, a keeper of a sacred understanding. This yearly sip of Kikian, this carefully managed encounter with the extraordinary, was not an addiction in the modern sense of a destructive, compulsive habit. Yet it was undeniably a powerful draw, a source of such profound satisfaction and meaning that it became central to the spiritual lives of countless ancient Greeks. People would return year after year, seeking that renewed connection, that powerful affirmation of their place in the universe. It was a dependency, yes, but one geared towards spiritual growth, community bonding, and existential peace. The Eleusinian mysteries offered a glimpse beyond the veil, a direct experience of the divine, facilitated by a substance known to science as a powerful entheogen, a compound that generates the divine within. It was a controlled, ritualized use of a psychotropic plant, not for recreation or escape, but for profound personal transformation. The addiction here was to truth, to insight, to an unparalleled sense of belonging and understanding. This powerful annual ritual, fueled by the mysterious Kikian, stands as another testament to how ancient civilizations harnessed the properties of plants and fungi, integrating them into the very fabric of their societies. These were not vices to be shunned, but tools to be revered, keys to unlock deeper dimensions of reality, providing solace, wisdom, and a profound connection to the sacred. The forgotten addiction of Kikian was not a burden, but a gateway, leading initiates from the ordinary world into the heart of the divine. And in doing so, it shaped the spiritual landscape of an entire civilization, offering a unique and deeply personal form of revelation year after year for nearly 2 millennia. From the profound spiritual journey offered by Kikian, we turn now to the raw, visceral demands of ancient life, where the line between survival and oblivion was often drawn by a plant, a root, or a fungal cap. If the Eleusinian mysteries sought to elevate the soul, other ancient practices pursued a different kind of transcendence: the unlocking of superhuman strength, relentless endurance, or fearsome battle rage. You are about to step onto a different kind of ancient stage, one where performance enhancers were not merely for sport, but for war, for labor, for the very act of existing in a world that demanded so much. Imagine yourself on a frost-bitten battlefield in ancient Scandinavia. The air bites at your exposed skin, and the scent of pine and impending violence hangs heavy. Around you, the Norsemen prepare for combat, their axes gleaming. But some among them are different. You watch as a warrior, broad-shouldered and grim-faced, begins to convulse. His eyes, normally keen and focused, now seem distant, unfixed. A low growl rumbles in his chest, then erupts into a primal scream that echoes across the frozen landscape. His muscles ripple with an unnatural tension, and a frothing spume begins to trickle from his lips. This is a berserker, a warrior fueled by more than mere courage. He has likely consumed a powerful entheogen, perhaps the vibrant red and white spotted fly agaric mushroom, Amanita muscaria, or possibly henbane. You witness his transformation. Pain seems to vanish, fear is obliterated, replaced by an uncontrollable, frenzied aggression. He charges into the fray with a terrifying abandon, impervious to blows, a living weapon of pure, unadulterated fury. For these warriors, the altered state was not a recreational pursuit. It was a tactical advantage, a gateway to a state of heightened, albeit dangerous, efficacy. The reliance on such substances was not viewed as a weakness, but as a necessary, even sacred ritual to become an unstoppable force in battle. Now shift your perspective entirely. You are high in the breathtaking yet unforgiving Andes Mountains of ancient Peru. The air is thin, piercingly cold, and your lungs burn with every ascent. You watch the local people, their movements fluid and tireless, as they navigate steep, treacherous paths that would leave you gasping for breath. In their cheeks you notice a distinct bulge. They are chewing coca leaves, perhaps with a pinch of alkali, like burnt shell ash, to enhance the effect. The slightly bitter, pungent leaves release alkaloids that numb the mouth and provide a steady, subtle stimulation. This is not the powerful rush associated with refined cocaine. This is a slow-release fuel for survival. You observe how it suppresses hunger, quells fatigue, and alleviates the debilitating symptoms of altitude sickness. For the Inca and their Moche predecessors, coca was far more than a simple stimulant. It was a sacred plant, a gift from the gods, essential for the chasquis, the fleet-footed messengers who ran hundreds of miles across the empire. It was a lifeline for laborers toiling in the mines or on the vast agricultural terraces. The daily ritual of chewing coca was deeply embedded in their culture, a practical necessity, a social lubricant, and a connection to the divine. Their reliance was not an indulgence but a fundamental pillar of their society, allowing them to conquer the harsh realities of their environment. Travel with me now to the sun-baked plains of East Africa, or the humid forests of West Africa. Here you see different leaves, different nuts, providing similar life-sustaining benefits. In parts of modern-day Yemen and Ethiopia, and stretching back through millennia, you find communities engaging in the ancient practice of chewing khat or cat. You observe individuals gathered in relaxed social settings, or on long, arduous journeys, continuously chewing the fresh leaves and tender shoots. The effect is one of mild stimulation, heightened alertness, and a pleasant sense of talkativeness and mild euphoria. It wards off sleep and hunger, allowing warriors to remain vigilant on patrol, or travelers to endure long treks across desolate landscapes. Further west, across the vast continent, the kola nut holds sway. You encounter it in ceremonies, in markets, and in the hands of weary traders. This bitter, caffeine-rich nut is chewed to combat fatigue, to stay awake during long nights of storytelling, or to maintain focus during complex negotiations. Both khat and kola were, and in many places still are, integral to the daily lives of countless people. They are not merely stimulants. They are cultural touchstones, aids to endurance and tools for social cohesion, allowing individuals to meet the physical and social demands of their world. Their use was a deeply ingrained, almost unconscious reliance, a functional necessity rather than a recreational choice. Even in the sophisticated urban centers of the classical world, the pursuit of enhanced performance was not unknown. You stand in the bustling Roman Forum, or in a sun-drenched Greek gymnasium. While the evidence is less direct than with the more culturally specific examples, it is plausible that ancient athletes and gladiators sought every possible advantage. Imagine a gladiator preparing for a fight to the death. The fear, the pain, the sheer physical demand. It would be logical to seek substances that could dull sensation, sharpen focus, or provide a surge of energy. We know of various herbal concoctions, perhaps containing mild narcotics from the opium poppy to numb pain, or stimulants from certain plant seeds to ward off fatigue. While not openly discussed in terms of doping as we understand it, the desire to push physical limits, to endure beyond ordinary human capacity, surely led to experimentation with nature's pharmacopoeia. Their reliance, if present, would have been born of desperation and the pursuit of victory, perhaps even survival. Consider the monumental labor that built ancient civilizations. You stand before the towering pyramids of Egypt, or the massive temples of Mesopotamia. Under the relentless sun, countless laborers toiled for decades. Beyond the daily rations of beer, which provided calories and some anxiolytic effect, it is reasonable to consider other plant-based aids. Perhaps cannabis was used to alleviate chronic pain and the monotonous grind, or other local botanicals to simply keep working under grueling conditions. The addiction here would not be a craving for pleasure, but a fundamental coping mechanism, a reliance on anything that could make the unendurable endurable. So, was this addiction? Not in the narrow clinical sense of a destructive, compulsive craving for a substance that undermines one's life. Instead, it was often a profound reliance, a societal integration of natural compounds to fulfill critical roles and meet overwhelming challenges. The forgotten addiction of these warriors, laborers, and travelers was not a burden of vice, but a functional dependence, often culturally mandated or deeply ingrained. It was the price of performing a necessary role, to achieve a battle trance, to conquer altitude and hunger, to endure endless journeys, or to complete monumental tasks. These substances were tools revered and utilized, not for escapism, but for profound engagement with the demanding realities of the ancient world. They reveal an intricate understanding of plants and the human body, transforming ordinary people into extraordinary performers year after year for millennia, in the service of survival, expansion, and enduring civilization. You have journeyed with us through the battlefields and the high mountain passes, through the deserts and the labor camps, witnessing how ancient peoples harnessed the power of natural compounds to endure, to perform, to conquer. These were tools for the body, for sheer physical output. But now, allow your mind to ascend beyond the earthly realm, to the very peaks of human aspiration and anxiety. For just as they sought strength for their muscles, the ancients also sought clarity for their minds and answers for their souls. They faced a world of uncertainty, capricious gods, unknown futures, and the crushing weight of existential questions. Where could one turn for divine guidance, for a glimpse beyond the veil of the present? The answer, for millennia, lay in the voice of the oracle, a voice often touched, if not entirely shaped, by a powerful yet forgotten form of functional dependence. Imagine yourself in ancient Greece, making the arduous pilgrimage to Delphi. You feel the dust beneath your sandals, the sun on your face as you climb the sacred slopes of Mount Parnassus. The air grows thin, imbued with a sense of ancient power. Before you rises the majestic temple of Apollo, a beacon of prophecy in the heart of the classical world. Here, within its hallowed walls, sat the Pythia, the priestess of Apollo, arguably the most influential woman of her time. Her pronouncements, often enigmatic and delivered in a trance, shaped the destinies of kings and empires, declared wars and guided countless personal decisions. But what enabled her extraordinary connection to the divine? What fueled her prophetic visions? For centuries, scholars debated the nature of the Pythia's trance. Was it pure divine inspiration, a gift from Apollo himself? Or was there something more tangible, something earthly at play? Walk closer to the temple, and you might catch a faint, sweet smell emanating from a fissure in the earth beneath the sacred Adaton, the inner sanctuary where the Pythia sat. Ancient accounts describe vapors rising from a chasm, said to induce her prophetic state. These tales were often dismissed as myth, poetic embellishment. Yet, modern geological and archaeological research has presented a compelling, if controversial, alternative. Scientists have discovered that the temple at Delphi sits atop a geological fault line. Analysis of the rocks and groundwater in the area revealed the presence of various gases, including ethylene, benzene, and methane. Ethylene, in particular, is known to be a potent psychoactive compound. In ancient times, even low concentrations of these gases rising from the earth could have created an environment within the Adaton conducive to altered states of consciousness. Imagine the Pythia, perhaps a woman of modest background, chosen for her spiritual receptivity, inhaling these subtle fumes, day after day, year after year. Her ritual was meticulous. She would purify herself, chew laurel leaves, which themselves contain mild psychoactive compounds, and then descend into the inner sanctum. There, seated on a tripod over the chasm, she would await the divine presence. As the gases enveloped her, she would enter a profound trance, her body convulsing, her words becoming a torrent of incoherent sounds. Priests, trained in the art of interpretation, would then translate her babbling into the hexameter verses that formed Apollo's prophecies. Was the Pythia addicted to these vapors? The word addiction feels too reductive, too modern for such a sacred role. Yet, her ability to perform her crucial function, to commune with the divine and deliver prophecy, was undeniably dependent on the consistent presence and inhalation of these natural compounds. For her, the haze was not a recreational indulgence. It was the mechanism of her sacred duty. The expectation, the societal pressure, the entire infrastructure of the Delphic oracle rested upon her capacity to enter this state. To deny her these vapors would be to deny Apollo his voice, to sever humanity's link to the divine. Her reliance was not a personal vice, but a fundamental, foundational element of one of the most powerful religious institutions of the ancient world. It was a functional dependence, institutionalized and revered for millennia. But Delphi was not alone in its reliance on mind-altering substances to bridge the gap between worlds. Across ancient Greece, at Eleusis, the renowned Eleusinian mysteries offered initiates a profound spiritual experience, promising insight into life, death, and the afterlife. For 2,000 years, these secret rituals involved the consumption of a mysterious beverage called kykeon. While its exact ingredients remain debated, many scholars believe the kykeon contains psychoactive properties, likely derived from ergot, a fungus that grows on barley and rye, known for its hallucinogenic effects. Imagine yourself an initiate, having undergone purification and fasting, then drinking this potent brew in the darkened telesterion, the grand hall of initiation. The collective experience of altered perception, vivid visions, and spiritual communion would have been transformative, shaping the initiate's understanding of existence. The kykeon was not a drink for pleasure. It was a sacrament, a key to unlocking profound spiritual truths. The entire mystery cult, its power and allure, was dependent on its capacity to deliver these controlled, consciousness-altering experiences. Journey further, across oceans and continents, to the vibrant civilizations of ancient Mesoamerica. Here, the Maya and the Aztec empires relied heavily on shamans, priests, and diviners who routinely utilized a rich pharmacopoeia of psychoactive plants to communicate with their gods, diagnose illnesses, and predict the future. Imagine a Mayan priest preparing for a sacred ceremony, consuming psilocybin mushrooms, known to them as flesh of the gods. Or perhaps peyote, a cactus with mescaline or ololeuque, the seeds of the morning glory plant containing lysergic acid amides. These were not casual ingestions. They were deliberate, ritualized acts, often preceded by strict fasting, purification, and prayer. The visions and insights gained were considered direct messages from the deities, vital for guiding the community, making decisions about planting, warfare, and leadership. Think of the tremendous responsibility resting on these shamans. Their entire societal function, their authority, their very purpose, was predicated on their ability to enter these altered states and return with divine wisdom. The community's well-being, its very survival, was often seen to depend on the accuracy and potency of these visions. The substances were not an escape, they were the portal. Their regular use, their necessity for fulfilling a critical role, constitutes a deeply ingrained, culturally mandated functional dependence. The shaman was addicted not to the substance in a destructive sense, but to the capacity it granted them to perform their sacred duty. In the vast plains of Siberia, shamans consumed Amanita muscaria, the iconic red and white spotted mushroom, to embark on spirit journeys, to heal the sick and retrieve lost souls. In the Amazon, indigenous cultures continue to use ayahuasca, a powerful visionary brew, or the San Pedro cactus, to access profound insights into healing, cosmology, and community guidance. Each of these traditions, separated by geography and culture, shares a common thread: the deliberate, ritualized, and often regular use of psychoactive substances as indispensable tools for spiritual engagement and societal function. This dependence was not about personal gratification or escaping reality. It was about confronting reality in its deepest, most mysterious forms. It was about seeking answers to questions that no ordinary human mind could fathom. The oracle, the shaman, the initiate, they were the conduits, and these substances were the essential keys that unlocked the doors of perception. Their reliance was a testament to the profound human need for meaning, for connection to the transcendent, and for guidance in a bewildering world. The addiction of the oracle or the shaman was not a personal failing, but a societal necessity. It was a functional dependence, deeply embedded within the religious, political, and social fabric of ancient civilizations. These substances were not vices. They were vital instruments, revered and carefully controlled, to access dimensions of reality deemed essential for the survival and prosperity of the community. They illuminate an ancient understanding of altered states, not as pathology, but as pathways to profound knowledge, revealing how deeply integrated psychoactive plants were in humanity's age-old quest for understanding, prophecy, and connection to the divine. This was a dependence that built empires, averted disasters, and brought solace to millions year after year for millennia. It was a cornerstone, not a crack, in the foundations of ancient power. You have journeyed with us through the sacred landscapes of ancient dependence, witnessing how profound human needs forged functional relationships with powerful substances and practices. We saw how altered states, carefully managed, became vital pathways to insight, prophecy, and community cohesion. These were cornerstones of power, not cracks. But now the path diverges. We step away from the revered altars and into the bustling marketplaces, the smoky backrooms, the private villas, where a different kind of craving took root, a dependence less about cosmic understanding and more about earthly fortune, a hunger for gain that often led to ruin. Imagine you are walking the dusty streets of ancient Memphis, 4,000 years ago. The sun beats down, glinting off the Nile. You pass a group gathered in the shade of a sycamore tree, their voices hushed, then suddenly erupting in shouts of excitement or groans of despair. They are casting small, six-sided cubes, intricately carved from bone or ivory, their faces marked with dots. These are dice, and the game is as old as the pharaohs themselves. In ancient Egypt, gambling was not merely a pastime. It was woven into the fabric of daily life, and even into their beliefs about fate. You might find a games board like the popular Senate, depicted in a tomb, suggesting its importance extended beyond life. The rolls of the dice, the movements of pieces, mirrored the journey of the soul, a cosmic game of chance and destiny. But for the living, the stakes were very real. You could bet a day's wages, a piece of jewelry, perhaps even a plot of land. The thrill of the unknown, the sudden surge of hope, the crushing weight of loss. These sensations were as potent then as they are today, binding players to the game in invisible chains. Travel now eastward, across the Fertile Crescent, to the sprawling cities of Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. Here too the clatter of astragali, the knucklebones of sheep or goats, would have been a constant sound in the taverns and public squares. You watch as a Sumerian merchant, his face etched with worry, throws the irregular bones onto a mat. His opponent, a man with a glint of triumph in his eye, lays claim to the stakes. A sack of barley, a bronze tool, perhaps even the merchant's freedom if his debts have mounted too high. Gambling in Mesopotamia could lead to servitude, a desperate last throw of the dice to escape an impossible burden of debt. The craving for a sudden reversal of fortune, a miraculous deliverance, could drive individuals to wager everything they possessed and more. Cross the seas to ancient Greece, where the spirit of competition permeated every aspect of life, from athletic contests to philosophical debates. You find yourself in the bustling agora, the marketplace, where small groups huddle, engaged in heated games of dice. The philosopher Plato might have frowned upon such pursuits, calling them a vice that corrupts the soul, yet they persisted. Greeks gambled on everything: the outcome of races, the prowess of fighting cocks, the role of the tesserae. Even the gods, in Homer's epics, were said to have cast lots to divide the cosmos amongst themselves. This tells you something profound about the human perception of chance, not as an aberration, but as an integral, if unpredictable, force in the universe. The desire to master this force, to bend luck to one's will, was an intoxicating draw, a powerful mental hook. But it is in Rome, the empire that spanned continents, where the addiction to gambling reached its zenith. You walk through the raucous streets of imperial Rome, the air thick with the smell of roasting meat and the murmur of 1,000 conversations. Suddenly, a new sound cuts through the din, the sharp slap of dice hitting a wooden table, followed by cheers and groans. Gambling was endemic, a pervasive fever that gripped all levels of society. Despite laws that ostensibly prohibited it, especially outside of specific festivals like the Saturnalia, the practice thrived openly in public gambling houses, known as ludus, and clandestinely in private homes. Imagine you step into one of these ludus, a dimly lit room filled with smoke and tension. Men from all walks of life, plebeians, soldiers, even senators in disguise, lean over tables, their eyes fixed on the rolling dice. They play with tesserae, the six-sided dice we know today, or tali, four-sided knucklebones. The stakes are astonishingly high. Fortunes are won and lost in a single throw. You might witness a nobleman losing an entire estate, a soldier gambling away his pay and then his armor, a freedman wagering his newfound liberty. The Roman historian Tacitus recounts how German tribesmen would gamble away their freedom, and even their lives, accepting voluntary slavery if they lost. This was a profound, almost suicidal dependence on the whims of chance. The allure was multifaceted. For the poor, it was the tantalizing dream of instant wealth, a sudden escape from the grinding reality of poverty. For the rich, it was a thrilling diversion, a test of nerve, a chance to assert dominance or simply to feel the rush of risk. The Roman poet Juvenal lamented the obsession, writing of men who would pawn their cloaks, then their rings, and finally their very lives just to play another hand. This wasn't a functional dependence. It was a deeply personal, often destructive, craving. It stripped individuals of their dignity, their resources, and their future. The cycle of desperate hope, the brief euphoria of winning, followed by the crushing despair of losing and the renewed compulsion to play again. This insidious loop was a recognized pattern of behavior, even if the Romans lacked our modern vocabulary for addiction. Further east, in ancient China, games of chance also flourished. You might observe intricate tile games, forerunners of mahjong, or observe crowds gathered around betting pools for cockfights or cricket fights. The Chinese even developed early forms of lotteries, famously used to fund public works projects, including parts of the Great Wall. While offering a public benefit, these lotteries still tapped into that universal human desire for unexpected fortune, drawing individuals into the gamble, hoping to turn a small sum into a life-changing reward. And across the vast ocean, in the sophisticated civilizations of Mesoamerica, gambling took on a particularly ritualistic yet equally high-stakes form. Picture yourself in the bustling marketplace of Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital. You see groups gathered around elaborate board games like patali, a cross-shaped board played with beans or stones, propelled by the throw of dice-like objects. While imbued with religious significance, connecting players to the will of the gods, patali was also played for immense personal stakes. You could wager precious jewels, your home, your children, and even your own freedom or life. Losing meant slavery or worse. The emotional intensity, the desperate prayers to the gods for a favorable throw, the terrifying consequences of failure. These reveal a profound human vulnerability to the intoxicating power of chance. The common thread weaving through all these ancient cultures is the potent psychological grip of gambling. It offers the illusion of control over an unpredictable world, a brief moment where fate might be swayed by a single toss or draw. It promises liberation from hardship, or an amplification of existing wealth and power. But the reality was often a descent into ruin. This was not a dependence that built empires in the same way the oracles did. This was a dependence that undermined individuals and families, creating vast inequalities, fueling crime, and fostering a pervasive sense of desperation. The chains of craving, forged by the thrill of the unknown and the lure of quick fortune, bound individuals across continents and millennia. These were personal addictions, driven by avarice, desperation, or simply the intoxicating rush of risk. They reveal a darker facet of human nature, a timeless susceptibility to behaviors that promise much but often deliver only loss and regret. Unlike the carefully managed, communally beneficial dependencies of the sacred, gambling offered a volatile, often destructive path. It was a pursuit of artificial highs, a desperate search for meaning or escape through the arbitrary whims of chance, a true testament to the enduring human struggle against the powerful allure of self-destructive desire. These ancient games, with their triumphs and their tragedies, whisper across the ages, echoing the very real cravings and consequences that continue to shape human lives today. You have considered the wild abandon of the gambler, the desperate chase for fortune, the immediate, exhilarating rush of risk that twisted lives and emptied purses. Now turn your senses to a craving far more ancient, far more universally acknowledged, yet equally insidious in its subtle grasp. This is not a craving born of chance, but of pure, unadulterated pleasure, a primal delight woven into the very fabric of human biology. You are now stepping into a world where sweetness was a treasure, a rare indulgence, a whisper of luxury that could captivate and bind as surely as any intoxicant. Imagine a time when the overwhelming sweetness you take for granted in your daily life simply did not exist. You live in a world where intense sugary flavors are rare, reserved for specific seasons or for the fortunate few. Your palate, unburdened by the constant onslaught of processed sugars, is exquisitely sensitive. A ripe berry, a sun-dried fig, the sticky sweetness of a date. These are peak experiences, moments of pure, simple joy that stand out against the savory and the bland. Your ancestors knew this intimately. They hunted for wild honey, braved bee stings to claim its golden elixir, understanding its value not just as food, but as a concentrated burst of energy and pleasure. Honey was the first great sweetener, a gift from the natural world, celebrated in ancient texts and rituals across continents. You might find it drizzled over offerings to gods, mixed with wine for a festive drink, or used as a balm for wounds. Its sweetness was revered, a potent symbol of prosperity and the bounty of the earth. But honey, while precious, was also subject to the seasons and the temperament of the bees. It could be cultivated, but its production was never on the scale of what was to come. Then, slowly, subtly, another form of concentrated sweetness began its journey across the ancient world. You are thinking of sugar, not the granulated white crystals of today, but its ancestral form, the juice extracted from the sturdy stalks of sugarcane. Originating in Southeast Asia, probably New Guinea, thousands of years ago, sugarcane was initially chewed for its sweet liquid. Imagine yourself in a dense tropical forest, discovering this tall grass, breaking open a stalk, and feeling the sudden rush of pure, vibrant sweetness flood your mouth. It is an experience of simple wonder, a revelation for your taste buds. The journey of sugarcane was a slow, deliberate migration. You can trace its path westward. From Southeast Asia, it moved into India around 1,500 years before the Common Era. Here, a crucial innovation took place. Instead of merely chewing the stalks, people learned to extract the juice and, most importantly, to boil it down into crystals. This transformation was revolutionary. It meant sweetness could be preserved, transported, and stored. It became a commodity, no longer just a perishable plant. Now, imagine yourself in ancient India, perhaps in a bustling market, where a merchant offers you a small, hard lump of this new crystallized substance. It is called sarkara, in Sanskrit, meaning gravel or grit, a fitting description for its texture. You place it on your tongue. The immediate, intense burst of sweetness is unlike anything you have ever experienced. It is purer, more concentrated than honey, with a distinct, almost exotic flavor. This is not just a food. It is an event, a sensation that ignites your brain's reward centers with unparalleled intensity. For centuries, this new sugar remained largely an Indian secret, an item of curiosity for traders and travelers. You might encounter it referenced in ancient Persian texts, carried back by soldiers of Darius the Great, who spoke of reeds that produce honey without bees. Alexander the Great's generals, returning from India in the 400s before the Common Era, also marveled at this incredible plant. For the Greeks and Romans, it was an exotic wonder, a substance on the very edges of their known world, arriving sparingly through vast trade networks. When sugar finally reached the Roman Empire, you would not find it in your everyday diet. It was not a foodstuff, it was a medicine. Roman physicians like Dioscorides prescribed it for a range of ailments, from stomach complaints to kidney stones. Imagine yourself suffering from a persistent cough, and your doctor offers you a tiny dose of this precious Indian salt, hoping its inherent sweetness and perceived medicinal properties will bring relief. The placebo effect alone, coupled with the sheer novelty, must have been potent. You can picture the slow, painstaking process. From India, sugar cultivation and processing techniques were gradually adopted by the Persian Empire. The Sasanian Persians, after conquering parts of India, brought the knowledge and the plant back to their own lands, establishing sugar plantations. This marked a significant step in sugar's journey towards wider availability, though still far from commonplace. For you, living in this era, a piece of sugar would still be an immense luxury, something savored slowly, perhaps even shared in tiny fragments as a gesture of profound hospitality. The rise of the Islamic Golden Age, starting in the 700s Common Era, truly propelled sugar across the ancient world. Arab traders and scholars were fascinated by this sweet substance. They refined its cultivation, developed more efficient processing methods, and introduced it to their vast empire, stretching from the Middle East across North Africa and into Spain. Imagine sailing with these intrepid merchants, witnessing the propagation of sugarcane from Mesopotamia to Egypt, then to Andalusia. For you, the desert traveler, sugar became a vital source of quick energy, easily transportable and remarkably stable. In Islamic societies, sugar began to transition from pure medicine to a broader role. It was still prized for its healing properties, but also became a key ingredient in elaborate sweets and pastries, especially during festivals. You might attend a royal banquet in Baghdad or Cairo and be offered a delicate confection, glistening with a sugar glaze, a true testament to the skill of the chef and the wealth of your host. The intoxicating sweetness would be a central feature of the experience, a highlight of the meal. For the ordinary person, however, sugar remained largely out of reach. It was an elite commodity, a status symbol. To possess sugar, to offer it to guests, signaled your wealth and your connection to distant, exotic lands. You might save up for months for a tiny amount to sweeten a special drink or to make a celebratory treat. Its scarcity enhanced its allure, turning it into a powerful object of desire. This rarity also meant that when it was available, people often consumed it to excess. Think of the psychological impact of having something so intensely pleasurable, yet so rarely accessible. When you had it, you indulged. The human brain is hardwired to seek out energy-dense foods, and sweetness is a clear signal of such energy. In a world where food scarcity was a constant threat, and where calories were hard-won, a substance like sugar, offering a concentrated burst of energy and an unparalleled sensory delight, was irresistibly appealing. You would not have understood the science of dopamine and neurotransmitters, but you would have felt the undeniable pull, the profound satisfaction it delivered. This was a subtle snare woven into your very biology. This ancient allure of sugar was not a conscious addiction in the modern sense, but it laid the groundwork for one. It created a powerful, undeniable craving. You would yearn for that intense sweetness, remember its taste, and seek it out whenever possible. The very limited availability only intensified this longing. It was a potent, desirable substance, consumed without moderation when it could be obtained. The craving, the desire for that powerful pleasure, was a deeply embedded human response. As the Crusades brought Europeans into closer contact with the sophisticated cultures of the Middle East, they encountered sugar in a more significant way. Returning knights and merchants brought back tales, and often small quantities, of this new spice. Imagine yourself a returning crusader, describing to your astonished family the sweet, crystalline substance that Muslim physicians used and that Arab confectioners transformed into wondrous treats. It would sound like magic. By the medieval period in Europe, sugar was still a rarity, sold by apothecaries alongside exotic spices. It was often more expensive than gold ounce for ounce. You would use it in tiny amounts, perhaps to sweeten a medicine, or as a very rare condiment for the ultra-wealthy. To taste sugar was to experience a profound luxury, a glimpse into a world of opulence. Its scarcity amplified its power, making it an object of almost fetishistic desire. This created a powerful, if unrecognized, pattern of dependency. A deep craving for a substance that triggered immense pleasure and was profoundly hard to obtain. So, while ancient civilizations may not have conceptualized a sugar addiction as you understand it today, they certainly experienced its profound allure and the powerful craving it generated. You have seen how a simple plant, through cultivation and innovation, transformed into a precious commodity, then a medicine, and finally, a luxury item that captivated human palates and minds. The journey of sugar from a chewed stalk to a crystallized treasure reveals a deep-seated human susceptibility to the siren call of concentrated pleasure, a subtle snare that has bound generations and continues to echo in your modern world. This ancient longing for sweetness, unbridled by modern understanding or availability, was one of humanity's earliest, most pervasive and most subtly powerful cravings. From the subtle, pervasive cravings of sweetness, your journey now takes you deeper into the ancient world's pursuit of comfort and solace. Where sugar offered a gentle, persistent siren song, other plants provided a more potent, immediate balm. When pain gnawed at the body, when grief tore at the soul, when the relentless rhythm of life pressed down, ancient humans instinctively reached for relief. They sought to soothe the weary, to calm the troubled, to escape, even for a fleeting moment, the harsh realities of their existence. And in this quest, they often found themselves walking a perilous path, unknowingly treading where dependency lay hidden, a silent snare woven into the very fabric of their remedies. Imagine yourself in a bustling marketplace in ancient Sumer, some 5,000 years ago. The sun beats down, dust swirls, and the air is thick with the scent of spices, animals, and humanity. Here, among the vendors hawking grains and pottery, you might spot a small, elegant seed pod. This is the poppy. To the Sumerians, the earliest known cultivators of this plant, it was the Herbal, the joy plant. Its milky latex, harvested by carefully scoring the unripe seed pods, held a profound secret: the power to silence pain, to induce dreams, to bring an unparalleled sense of euphoria. You see it in the hands of a priestess, administering a potion to a suffering patient. You witness it in the rituals designed to connect mortals with the divine. You hear hushed whispers of its use to calm crying infants, to ease the agony of a broken limb, or to provide a peaceful slumber for those nearing life's end. The knowledge of the poppy's potent properties spread like wildfire across the ancient world. From Sumer, it traveled to Egypt, where it was immortalized in hieroglyphs and found in burial sites, suggesting its importance in both life and death. The Ebers Papyrus, an ancient Egyptian medical text dating back to around 1500 BCE, lists opium as an ingredient in remedies for everything from excessive crying to various aches and pains. For the Egyptians, it was the sleep-bringing plant, a powerful component in their extensive pharmacopoeia. Picture yourself now in the marble halls of classical Greece. You might find Hypnos, the god of sleep, and his son Morpheus, the god of dreams, often depicted holding poppies. The Greeks called it opium, from which your modern word opium derives. Great physicians like Hippocrates, the father of medicine, recognized its efficacy, prescribing it for internal diseases, external wounds, and female complaints. It was a respected medicine, a divine gift to alleviate suffering. But even then, its power was recognized with a cautious reverence. You would know that too much could bring eternal sleep, a subtle warning against its profound strength. As the Roman Empire rose, so too did the use of opium. Soldiers carried it to soothe their battlefield wounds. Patricians used it to ease their anxieties or induce pleasurable reveries. It was mixed into wine, brewed into teas, or rolled into small pellets for consumption. You might encounter an elite Roman woman, exhausted by the day's demands, seeking its solace to lull her into a deep, dreamless sleep. Or perhaps a gladiator, given a dose to dull the searing pain of his injuries, allowing him to fight another day, or to face his end with a stoic calm. This was the perilous path. For while opium offered profound relief, it also wove a subtle, invisible chain. You would observe that those who partook too often or for too long began to change. Their bodies, once soothed, now craved the very substance that granted them peace. An internal sickness would brew when the poppy's balm was absent. A restless torment, an inability to sleep, an aching in their bones, a profound malaise that only another dose could quell. This was not understood as addiction in the clinical sense you know today. There were no rehabilitation centers, no 12-step programs. Instead, it was often seen as a weakness of character, a prolonged illness, or simply a deep, unshakable need. But the experience, the gnawing hunger for the drug's presence, the profound sickness of its absence, was undeniably real. The poppy's milky sap, so effective at soothing physical pain, could also numb emotional pain, blurring the sharp edges of reality into a pleasant haze. For a world fraught with hardship, disease, and constant struggle, this promise of escape was intoxicating literally and figuratively. It offered a fleeting paradise, a temporary reprieve from suffering, but at the unseen cost of dependency. You would see individuals bound to its rhythm, their days governed by the pursuit of its gentle oblivion, their lives subtly reshaped by its profound influence. The joy plant became for some a silent master. But opium was not the only plant offering solace and escape. Journey with me now to the vast Eurasian steppes, where nomadic Scythian warriors, known for their fierce independence and elaborate golden artifacts, understood another powerful plant, cannabis. Imagine the scene, a small, portable tent, perhaps in the dead of winter. You watch as Scythians throw cannabis seeds and leaves onto hot stones, creating a pungent, intoxicating vapor. They would then sit, enclosed in the tent, inhaling the fumes, allowing themselves to enter altered states of consciousness. Herodotus, the Greek historian, described their rituals, noting how they howled with delight as the smoke took hold. Cannabis, unlike opium, was less about profound sedation and more about altering perception, inducing euphoria, and fostering communal bonding. Its uses were incredibly diverse. In ancient China, it was revered as one of the 5 grains, a source of fiber for ropes and textiles, but also recognized for its medicinal properties. The legendary Emperor Shennong, considered the father of Chinese medicine, reportedly prescribed cannabis for conditions like rheumatism, gout, malaria, and even for memory loss. You might witness a Chinese physician boiling cannabis leaves into a tea, or grinding its flowers into a paste, offering it to patients to alleviate their suffering. In ancient Egypt, you would find evidence of cannabis used as a pain reliever and anti-inflammatory. It was employed to treat sore eyes, to ease the pains of childbirth, and even to reduce spasms. For women experiencing menstrual discomfort, cannabis suppositories offered a degree of relief. Its fibers were also used for practical purposes, but its psychoactive properties were clearly understood and utilized, though perhaps with less dramatic societal impact than opium. The difference between these ancient addictions and your modern understanding is crucial. There was no concept of a disease of addiction. Instead, people simply sought relief, comfort, or altered states of consciousness, unaware of the biological mechanisms that would bind them. They were simply experiencing the consequences of repeated exposure to powerful compounds. The symptoms of withdrawal were likely interpreted as a new illness, a spiritual affliction, or a weakness of the individual, rather than a direct consequence of the remedy itself. You have walked through the ancient world, observing how humanity, in its eternal quest for comfort and escape, unknowingly cultivated dependencies that echo even today. From the joy plant, that promised profound stillness, to the cannabis that opened pathways to altered perception, these substances were woven into the very fabric of ancient life, as medicine, as ritual aid, as simple pleasure. They offered powerful balms for the weary soul, but each carried its own perilous path. The forgotten addictions of ancient civilizations remind you that the human susceptibility to concentrated pleasure and profound relief is a timeless truth, one that has shaped lives and societies for millennia, long before the complex understanding you possess in your modern world. The ancient world, in its innocence and its wisdom, laid bare the enduring human challenge of balancing solace with self-control, a lesson still keenly felt in your own time. You recognize these echoes, do you not? For they resonate still, even in your present world. Walk with me now, not through the sanitized halls of a museum, but through the vibrant, dusty, often chaotic streets of civilizations long past. Feel the sun on your skin, smell the spices in the air, hear the distant clamor of market activity. We step into worlds where the very concept of addiction, as you understand it today, was unarticulated, yet its shadow stretched long and wide over countless lives. The substances differed, their sources more rooted in the immediate natural world, but the human brain's response, its capacity for forming powerful, often destructive habits, remained profoundly unchanged. Consider first the oldest, perhaps the most universally embraced and simultaneously feared of all substances: alcohol. From the earliest agricultural communities, the fermentation of grains, fruits, and honey became a foundational technology. You find yourself in an ancient Egyptian tomb, gazing at reliefs depicting banquets. Here, servants offer vessels of wine dark and rich to their masters. You see the guests, perhaps a touch too jovial, their postures relaxed, their inhibitions loosened. Wine was a gift from the gods, a symbol of plenty, a part of religious rites and social gatherings. But travel beyond the elite feasts, to the sun-baked fields where laborers toiled, or the bustling workshops of artisans. Here you would discover a different story. For many, a daily ration of beer, weak but consistent, was not merely a beverage. It was a caloric staple, a source of comfort, a means to dull the relentless ache of physical labor. You might observe a potter, his hands steady at the wheel, taking regular sips from a crude earthenware jug. Is this simple refreshment, or has the steady intake of fermented grain become an indispensable part of his day, a silent governor of his mood and productivity? The line blurred as it always does. The consequences too were known: the stumbling gait, the slurred speech, the quarrels erupting in the marketplace. Ancient legal codes and moral teachings across Mesopotamia, Egypt, and later Greece and Rome frequently cautioned against the excesses of drink, implicitly acknowledging its pervasive, sometimes ruinous, hold on individuals and communities. Now let your senses drift eastward to the Fertile Crescent, to the ancient lands of Sumer, Assyria, and later the Hellenistic world. Here you encounter a plant revered for its beauty and its potent gifts, the opium poppy. Its delicate petals unfurl to reveal a seed pod from which, when scored, a milky latex oozes, drying to a dark, sticky resin. This substance, known as opium, was a powerful painkiller, a sedative, a bringer of sleep and vivid dreams. You might visit a physician in ancient Greece, observing him carefully measure out a dose for a patient racked with chronic pain. Relief would be swift, profound. But what began as medicine often transcended its initial purpose. As the trade routes expanded, opium spread. Imagine yourself in a bustling port city like Alexandria or Rome. You might see individuals not necessarily sick, but seeking solace from the anxieties of daily life, perhaps a momentary escape from a harsh reality. Opium could be ingested, dissolved in wine, or sometimes even smoked. Its effects, a profound sense of calm, euphoria, and detachment, were intensely alluring. You can almost feel the heavy lethargy, the sweet oblivion it offered. For those who used it regularly, a deep physical dependence would develop. The gnawing unease, the aches and pains, the restless nights that followed its absence, would drive a relentless search for the next dose. Though not conceptualized as a disease in the modern sense, the patterns of reliance and the profound difficulty in ceasing use were undeniably present, a silent current flowing beneath the surface of these ancient societies. Journey further still, high into the rugged peaks of the Andes. The air is thin here, the sun intense. You see the indigenous people, their cheeks often bulging slightly. They are chewing the leaves of the coca plant. For millennia, the coca leaf has been intertwined with Andean life, culture, and spirituality. It is not the refined, potent cocaine known today, but a mild stimulant, a natural energy booster. Watch a farmer scaling a steep mountain path, a small pouch of coca leaves at his side. He periodically replenishes his mouth, tucking the leaves into his cheek, perhaps with a bit of alkaline ash to aid extraction. You observe his sustained effort, his apparent resistance to fatigue and hunger. Coca was sacred, a gift from the Pachamama, Mother Earth, used in rituals for divination and as a potent medicine. It helped people cope with the harsh environment, providing endurance and alleviating altitude sickness. But for many, especially those engaged in arduous labor, the regular chewing of coca became an integral, non-negotiable part of their daily existence. Can you imagine performing back-breaking work at high altitudes without the sustained, subtle boost it provided? The absence of coca, while not causing the extreme withdrawal symptoms of opium or severe alcohol dependence, would undoubtedly lead to profound lethargy, a diminished capacity to work, and a deep, ingrained craving. It was a functional reliance, a dependence woven into the very fabric of survival in a challenging landscape. Now, let us turn our gaze to the sun-drenched islands and lush jungles of Southeast Asia and Oceania. Here you encounter the betel nut, a seed from the areca palm, typically chewed with slaked lime and wrapped in a betel pepper leaf. As you watch, people's mouths are stained a vivid red, their teeth often blackened by prolonged use. This practice too has roots stretching back thousands of years. The betel chew provides a mild stimulant effect, a sense of well-being, increased alertness, and a slight warmth in the body. It is a social ritual offered as a greeting shared among friends and family. You witness a group of villagers gathered, their conversations punctuated by the rhythmic chewing, the spitting of crimson juice. It is a moment of connection, a shared experience. Yet, beneath the social veneer, a distinct pattern of reliance emerges. The regular use of betel nut can lead to significant oral health problems, including oral cancer. And cessation can be difficult, marked by cravings, irritability, and a feeling of emptiness. For those accustomed to its daily presence, the absence of the betel chew would feel profoundly unsettling, a disruption to their physical and psychological equilibrium. And what of cannabis? This versatile plant, cultivated across vast swathes of Eurasia for millennia, offered fibers for textiles, seeds for food, and leaves and flowers for their psychoactive properties. You might find yourself in a Scythian burial mound, among ancient nomads, where evidence of cannabis being burned and inhaled has been discovered. Imagine the warriors, before a raid or during a funeral rite, gathering around a brazier, inhaling the pungent smoke. The effects would have been varied. A sense of euphoria, altered perceptions, a feeling of relaxation, perhaps even enhanced focus in certain contexts. Cannabis was used medicinally, spiritually, and recreationally. While perhaps less physically addictive than opium or alcohol in its raw forms, a psychological reliance could certainly develop. For those seeking respite from the harsh realities of ancient life, or a deeper connection to the spiritual realm, the experience offered by cannabis could become a highly valued, often sought-after state. These are just a few threads in the vast tapestry of human interaction with mind-altering substances throughout antiquity. You begin to understand that the desire for altered states, for relief, for energy, for social lubrication, or simply for escape, is not a modern failing but a fundamental aspect of human experience. The ancients did not have the vocabulary of neuroscience or psychology to articulate the mechanisms of dopamine pathways or neurochemical imbalances. They did not categorize addiction as a disease. Yet they lived with its manifestations. They understood, implicitly, the powerful hold these substances could exert. They saw the lives disrupted, the health compromised, the personal freedoms gradually eroded. You might witness a Roman citizen, known for his love of the tavern, gradually losing his standing in society, his family despairing. You might observe an Egyptian scribe, his work becoming erratic, his attention wavering as he succumbs more and more to the soporific embrace of opium. You might see a hard-working Andean farmer struggling to maintain his stamina on the mountain paths if his supply of coca leaves ran out. The precise names for their afflictions may have been different, perhaps weakness of will, intemperance, or a curse, but the underlying human vulnerability to the quiet tyranny of habit, to the powerful pull of these ancient substances, remains strikingly familiar. The faces change, the empires rise and fall, the plants themselves evolve through cultivation and trade. But the echo, that persistent resonance of human craving and human reliance, sounds across every age, a constant hum beneath the grand symphony of history. What does it tell you about yourself, about your own world, to see these ancient faces so like your own, grappling with the same timeless struggles? It reminds you that understanding the roots of this pervasive human condition is not just about dissecting the past, but about truly knowing ourselves, in every moment, in every age. The quiet stories of ancient addiction are not just historical footnotes. They are profound reflections of the enduring complexities of the human spirit.